Hello and welcome to Smaulgld's People's Bank of China's Gold Reserve update for the month of August 2017. Again, People's Bank of China adds no gold to her reserves in August. Now, this was pointed out to me by Dave's Folly on Twitter that I've been saying that the People's Bank of China has not been adding gold to her reserves since October 2017, and that is indeed what the People's Bank of China is reporting. But Dave's Folly pointed out that October 2016 is the date that, or the month that China became part of the SDR currency basket. Now that fact had eluded me because China had been admitted, I think about a year earlier, the vote had been taken to readjust the SDR currency basket, and they weren't admitted though until October 2016. So since their admission to the SDR currency basket, whether it's an agreement amongst other members of the SDR basket, or it's just China itself not wanting to disclose any more gold or not adding more gold to her reserves via the People's Bank of China, it has been a fact that since their admission, since October 2016, they have not added any gold to their reserves. Now, as we mentioned, and thanks for Dave's Folly for pointing that out to me, as we've been saying, that doesn't mean that there's not gold in China. That doesn't mean there's not more gold. And we'll see some charts on the flows through Hong Kong, the Shanghai Gold Exchange gold, the gold mining that goes on in China. There's plenty of gold in China. And there's also, I saw some charts earlier in the week, plenty of gold at Chinese state-run banks as well that are not the People's Bank of China. So it seems as if the People's Bank of China has stopped reporting any more gold. And one speculation could be that the Bank of England, which is part of the SDR basket, and the Bank of Japan, basically, between the two of them, don't have as much gold as People's Bank of China has. So maybe People's Bank of China doesn't need to add more gold to its reserves, given that the other two members have far less gold listed on their accounts. That we'll see a chart later at the top 10, and England's not even in the top 10 of gold holding nations. Let's just quickly go through the rest of the People's Bank of China's financial situation. Their overall reserves have risen for the 7th month in a row, up another 11 billion in July to 3.092 trillion. They had dipped below 3 trillion earlier at the very beginning of the year, and also they had been at 4 trillion a while back. So over the last couple of years, the People's Bank of China's foreign reserves have fallen 320 and 513 billion dollars in 2016 and 2015 respectively. And as I mentioned, the People's Bank of China, prior to they hadn't announced their gold reserve since 2009, and when they finally re-announced their update in July of 2015, they showed that they had added a decent amount of gold. They had added gold, but people were surprised that they still came in. I think the number was 1,500 or so. They didn't add that much. They went from 1,054 tons up to 1,658, which people thought wasn't that much. They thought it was just 600 tons of gold, no big deal. And then since that, they reported, since July 2015, they reported monthly increases all the way up until October 2016, when they just stopped reporting that they were adding any gold whatsoever. Some other things going on in China. This out yesterday, U.S. threatened to cut China out of the dollar system if they do not support North Korean sanctions. Now, while China does have the CIPS system, an alternative way, still the SWIFT system is by far and away the largest settlement system in the world. And also, China owns 1.2 trillion. We'll see a chart in a second. $1 trillion in U.S. treasuries. Now, that old expression about when you owe $100, you stay up at night, but when you owe $10,000, the lender stays up at night. United States owes China interest and 1.2 million in principal payments. And we know, we've heard Donald Trump talk about this before, that China has been ripping us off. So I guess he feels they owe us, or owe the United States, full compliance on the North Korean sanctions. And his Treasury Secretary said the other day that if they don't comply, this is pretty severe threat, that they'll be cut out of the US dollar system. Now, I don't know what that means. I know it means not allowing them to use the SWIFT system. Does it mean that the United States then says no more Chinese goods come into the United States? That would be just an incredible step to take. It would devastate both countries because China sends literally boatloads of stuff to the US. The United States buys boatloads of stuff. It's cheap. It keeps inflation down. It just fills up Walmart and all the other stores. And the other thing, I mean, if they really wanted to get out of hand with this, they could just tell China, we're not paying you your full interest payments. We're going to pay you a percentage, or we're not going to pay the principal payments. I don't know if it gets to that. I think the United States wouldn't threaten China in this fashion unless they expected full compliance. So I think this is just a lot of posturing by the United States, and I don't think China, or they're calling their bluff. We'll see. Both sides has so much to lose by. A lot of people think, oh, China can do without the United States and Europe and Japan. No, they can't. They got the Silk Road. There's nothing on the Silk Road. The Silk Road is desolate. They want to develop it. They're borrowing a lot of money to just try to develop economies along the Silk Road. There's 70-80% of the world's GDP is not along the Silk Road. It's in the US, Canada, Mexico, Europe, Japan, Australia. It's not along the Silk Road. So China clearly is not in a position where it wants to flex its muscle and try to go it alone. Now, Russia can do that. Russia does go it alone. Russia does very little trade with the US, has decent trade with Europe, and they have oil. So, and Russia has a very prudent, non-debt driven central bank. So Russia can and has been able to ride out sanctions. They're not overpopulated. Russia seems to be able to get along just fine the way things are, even with sanctions. China, I'm not so sure about. China can't afford just to lose the United States trade, no matter what the gold bugs say. They have gold. Oh, and by the way, about that story about the gold-backed yuan. Now they're backing off. So one is gold convertible into yuan. That story is so false on so many levels. First of all, Coase Jansen points out that the gold in the Shanghai Gold Exchange that you would convert to, currently you're not allowed to get that gold out of the country. So what good does that do? Second of all, any country that sells oil for dollars or whatever, they can always go and buy gold if they will. So it's no big deal that they can convert yuan into gold. They can do that with dollars right now if they wanted to. But the real ridiculous thing that I was thinking about the other day is, yeah, China has $1.2 trillion, which basically they have too much. They have too many U.S. treasuries. Why would they want to pay in gold? Why wouldn't they want to get rid of their dollars, especially now if the U.S. is threatening them and they want to, quote, dump treasuries? No better place to dump them is to sell them and then use the money to buy gold. I mean, to buy oil. So this idea that China is hankering to offer to pay in yuan and then convert it into gold really doesn't make much sense at all. If they really wanted to harm the dollar, they start dumping their treasury bills, sell them, and use that to buy oil with. Why would they want to get rid of their gold? The whole story makes no sense. And we've covered this in other videos. You can go back and check them. I did one on fake but accurate. I did one that was entitled, I don't remember what it was entitled. It was about the report on Chinese gold-backed yuan. The story sounded like nonsense to me when I first heard it. I gave it 50-50 chance of being true. Having looked at it and thought about it some more, it's probably 95 to 100% just made up. And again, it's directionally true that sure, China wants to trade in the yuan. They're not going to go to Saudi Arabia and say, look, we're going to give you yuan now and you can convert it into gold. We haven't worked. It makes no sense. It really doesn't, other than if you want to believe that China is working for your interests, meaning you have gold and you want gold to go up, and that China wakes up in the morning and thinks, how can I make gold bugs happy and create demand for gold? That's not what's on their mind. That story to me now, I would go on record to say is complete BS. And it wasn't sourced by anyone. People are now saying, oh, it's sourced. It was published here, there, and everywhere. That doesn't make it sourced. I make up a fake story and everyone publish it. That doesn't self-validate the story that everyone else published it. No one's fact-checked it. The author himself has never said where he got the story from. The author is not Chinese. The author wasn't even living in Chinese. He had an Indonesian byline. And there's no official source cited. They didn't even do what the New York Times and the Washington Post do when they want to make up a fake story. They say unnamed sources, and then they just say whatever they want. This one doesn't even say unnamed sources. The sentence reads, China is expected to. Expected to by whom? In any event, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but we are talking about China. Let's take a look at the rest of what the People's Bank of China has been doing. So, as Dave's Folly pointed out, they have not reported adding gold to the reserves since October 2016. And it was over 2 years ago when they first announced their update. They've been reporting every month. So they do, when they report the reserves, they are putting that gold line in there. It's just that they haven't been changing that gold line other than the value of their gold reserves, which do fluctuate as the price goes higher. They're saying 1,842 point whatever tons of gold that they have goes up and down, and lately it's been going up. If you like these reports, please consider donating to Smaulgld, becoming a patron, or donating via PayPal, Bitcoin, or Litecoin. I do appreciate those donations. Remember, I'm a smaller website. I have less YouTube. If you like this kind of reporting, you really don't get it in other places. The bigger sites that tout all these hype stories, they get more donations, they get more viewers. By definition, because I'm not going along with the narratives, I am not cheerleading for gold, not cheerleading for silver, and also because I occasionally cover cryptocurrencies, that pisses off some people who like gold and silver. I don't know why. I don't pump them either. I report on them. So if you like this type of reporting, that's basically covering gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, and as balanced as I can be, everyone has their own prejudices, then please consider donating to Smaulgld, becoming or signing up, just at least registering on the site, following on VidMe. We're also trying to be on as many platforms as possible because you never know what can happen on YouTube. We're also on BitChute. Become a patron. All right, let's see what else we got with China. So there's the gold reserve. I don't even bother updating the chart anymore. They're flat there since. That's through July. I didn't add August, but for those of you who want to see, it would be just straight across. Still 1,842 plus tons. We've talked about that the gold, that this is not China's gold. This is just what's on the People's Bank of China's balance sheet. And that's all that explanation there. I even had it published in Zero Hedge, the case of China's missing gold, where they picked up on the same concept, that there's gold throughout China held officially with other entities, with other banks, with individuals, sovereign wealth funds, and so on. It's just not on that. And it sounds like, for whatever reason, for IMF reasons, general reporting, the People's Bank of China looks like they're not going to either add any more to the People's Bank of China, or they're not going to tell you. I suspect it's the former. I think they're just not adding more to the People's Bank of China. That doesn't mean they're not adding more gold into the country. They're not holding on to the gold that they mine, and they're not importing vast amounts. That they are. But so the reserves are moving up. This is a chart that shows how the reserves have moved up. They finally got a little tick up there. You see they had gone down for the last couple of years. They're now moving up slowly. Treasuries. Now, I'd be interesting to see where the treasuries go. Now, the treasuries, U.S. treasuries, have been rising ever since Trump was elected. Now, if this bluff that they call, and they tell China, look, you got to do whatever we say with North Korea, and China does, well, I bet that your numbers for August and September will shoot through the roof, because that will just mean that China is listening to the United States and is actually buying more treasuries. Now, if China decides to be recalcitrant and say, screw you, buddy, you know, we're not going to put up with this anymore, well, then you'll see these go, you'll see a, quote, dumping of treasuries. So I think, obviously, we're going to see in July, because this is before the threat, you're going to see this number go higher. Again, Chinese treasuries, that'll be reported in a few days. We won't get August and September numbers until November and December. And then we'll know whether China is continuing to add treasuries or they finally said, hey, no, 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 we're not playing ball anymore. But I think they started, quote, playing ball ever since Trump got elected. They didn't want to be labeled a currency manipulator. And it seemed like the de-dollarization, so to speak, of getting rid of treasuries was going down. Now, China could turn around and say, hey, I don't like this being pushed around. We're not going to back any yuan with gold and an offer to pay yuan convertible into gold for oil. We're just going to sell all these treasuries, buy as much oil as we want. We'll see. Also here, Hong Kong gold imports. Still, it was 77 tons last month in July. It's over a month ago now. 452 tons this year, so they'll probably import another 900 tons. Massive amounts. This is just going in to Hong Kong, and then since 2001, 5,409 tons. Massive amounts going into Hong Kong, into China from Hong Kong. We don't even know what comes in from Shanghai. So plenty of gold going into China. Mining production doesn't look like it's slowed down the last 3 years. Look like they're capped out. What's interesting here, that's 450 tons, but China doesn't have the largest gold reserves. They just are making a great job of pulling out the amount that they have. There was a story about them also trying to buy an Indonesian mine. They are definitely trying to acquire gold. There's no two ways about it. Again, it just doesn't end up at People's Bank of China. Here's your Shanghai Gold Exchange Reserve. Again, a brisk business this year. Probably as good as last year, but a little better. Probably the third best year in the last few years. I'll have those numbers out. The August numbers were very strong again. We'll have that out later this week. Here's where China sits, and looks like they're going to stay there. Russia keeps adding. Central Bank of Russia keeps adding, so they will probably pass China in a year's time or so if they keep adding at the current pace that they are. Well, here's what I'm talking about. Here's India, 558. I'm not India. Japan, 765. They're in the SDR. England's not even in here. I think they have about 300 tons. So there's no need for China to report massive amounts of gold just to be in the SDR. The euro, you count Italy, well, Italy, France, Germany, these are all euro countries. There's enough gold there. US suppose there's 81. Just take these numbers on their face. China has the third most value in the SDR on a percentage basis, and they have the third most gold. They're not going to approach what they have on paper at the EU or the US, so there's no need to add to their gold, and they're well ahead of Japan and England. So I think that's what's going on. They figure for purposes of the People's Bank of China, for the purposes of IMF, there's no point in adding more gold. If you're interested in adding gold to your stack, you can do so through the Smaulgld site, which no one is doing anymore. And it's not the Smaulgld site, it's at the US Mint. The retail sales are down for gold and silver alike. But if you want to buck the trend and buy gold or silver, not investment advice to do so, you can do so at the links below or on the Smaulgld site, BGSC, Gold and Eagle Coin, SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange. You click on those links, you pay no more, no less than if you visited those sites directly. And you compare pricing and shipping, and if you do buy, Smaulgld gets a small commission. So please consider doing your shopping there if you're interested. I don't know what that is, and I think that's it. Yes, so we'll do the People's Bank of China, not the People's Bank, we'll do the Shanghai Gold Exchange probably tomorrow. I still have the American Gold Buffalo report, which was dismal to report on. Then I've got the Canadian Mint Gold, Canadian Mint Silver, and then Indian Gold imports and Indian Silver imports. So please stay tuned. Thank you very much.